For most people, the journey into anime begins with the giants. One Piece with its endless sense of adventure, Yu Hakusho, and that raw, punch-you-in-the-soul energy. Berserk, if your childhood was a little darker than average, or Cowboy Bebop, if you were born with a philosopher's heart. And of course, Dragon Ball Z, DBZ, is basically the universal initiation. You didn't plan to watch it, it just appeared in your life. Goku yelling into his own spine until his hair glowed. Vegeta talking about pride again and again and again. That was the start for so many of us. Anime back then felt like a second world that opened up after school, right when you dropped your backpack. But my real starter anime, the one that didn't just entertain me but actually opened my eyes to what anime could be, wasn't one of the giants. It was Samurai Champloo. I was around 13 when it hit me. The show had aired a few years earlier, around 2004, but it reached me in 2007, and at that age I didn't understand themes or symbolism or production. I didn't know who directed what, but Samurai Champloo felt different. It didn't rely on huge power-ups or giant declarations. It had this flow to it. The pacing, the animation, the fights. It all felt strangely modern and old school at the same time. Later, I'd learn it was made by Shinichiro Watanabe, the same guy behind Cowboy Bebop, and suddenly everything made sense. Both shows are about wandering. Both are about mismatched characters who shouldn't work together but somehow do. Both use music, not as background noise, but as a core part of the storytelling. Cowboy Bebop had Yoko Kanno and jazz. Champloo had nujabes and hip-hop. And honestly, even as a kid, you can tell when something has soul. I didn't know who nujabes was back then, but I recognized the feeling. That mellow, nostalgic, slightly sad, but still hopeful style. It stuck with me long before I learned his name.
Back in the day when the beat was raw, DJ on the wheels laying down the law, breaking out the vinyl, no time to pause, drop in the needle, forget the flaw.
The characters were another thing that hooked me, even before I understood why. Mugen, wild, unpredictable, fights like he's breakdancing with a sword. A rooster, chaotic and unfiltered. Jin, precise, calm, almost emotionless. A fish, steady and controlled. They're complete opposites, but that's the magic. Every time they clashed, it felt like two philosophies colliding. Instinct versus discipline, chaos versus order. And then you have Fu, who gets overlooked way too often. She isn't a fighter. She isn't mysterious. She isn't superpowered, but she's the reason the whole journey even happens. Without her, Mugen and Jin would have killed each other immediately. She's the emotional center, the glue, the one who gives the story direction. Even as a kid, I could sense their balance without understanding it. Their personalities were exaggerated enough for a younger mind to grasp, but layered enough that every rewatch revealed something new. And yeah, I rewatched it 3 or 4 times at least. Every couple of years I'd go back, and each time a different episode hit me harder. The graffiti one, the baseball one, the backstory arcs. Champloo grows with you. It doesn't explain everything, it just lets you feel your way through it. As I got older, Samurai Champloo turned into one of those shows that grew up with me. At 13, everything was about the movement, the spinning kicks, the sword clashes, the energy. The cool factor basically carried the whole experience. But the older I got, the more I noticed the parts I didn't pay attention to the first time. Suddenly I understood the humor a bit better. The dry jokes, the randomness, the strange little side characters that pop in and out. I started catching references to real Edo-era culture, noticed the social commentary in certain episodes, and appreciated the animation choices Watanabe made on purpose. The soundtrack also hit harder with age. When I first heard Nujabes, I just thought, yeah, this sounds good. But as you grow up, life gives those tracks new meaning. They become the kind of songs you listen to while walking home at night, or studying, or thinking about things you don't usually say out loud. The music becomes personal, almost nostalgic for a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. And then there's the ending. As a kid, it felt fine, simple, kind of open-ended, but as an adult, that ending feels honest. Not everything needs some dramatic resolution. Not every relationship becomes a lifelong bond. Sometimes the people you meet on the road are just there for that chapter of your life, and that's okay. Mugen, Jin, and Fu go their separate ways, not because they stopped caring, but because the journey served its purpose. That's something you only understand later, when you've had friends you drifted away from, or phases of life that ended quietly. And I think that's why Samurai Champloo stuck with me more than almost any other show. It didn't force its message on me. It didn't try to be deep. It didn't pretend to be profound. It just existed, stylish, funny, emotional, in its own quiet way. And surprisingly relatable as time went on. So yeah, for most people, the story begins with DBZ, with One Piece, with Yu Hakusho, or Berserk, or Cowboy Bebop. But the anime that stayed with me, the one I actually grew up with, was Samurai Champloo. It didn't shout, it didn't try too hard, it just walked beside me, at 13, at 17, at 20, at 23, and every time it showed me something new. And that's why, even today, I still think of it as the real beginning of my anime journey.
Yeah. Let's go.
Samurai Champloo is only 26 episodes, but it's one of the tightest 26-episode stories ever made. No filler, no unnecessary arcs, just a clean, memorable road trip through Edo, Japan with hip-hop beats guiding the way. And honestly, it didn't need more than that. Some shows need hundreds of episodes to land. Champloo needed 26 to leave a mark that lasted years. Looking back, it wasn't just an anime to me. It was the moment I realized anime could be art. Not high art, not dramatic, pretentious art. Just something creative, stylish, emotional, and unique. Something that didn't follow the rules. Most people start with the giants. One Piece, Yu Hakusho, Berserk, Bebop, Dragon Ball Z. But for me, the show that really started my anime journey was two samurai who couldn't stand each other, one girl trying her best to guide them, and a soundtrack that felt like a memory. Samurai Champloo didn't shout for my attention. It didn't try to overwhelm me. It just flowed in, quietly, and stayed. And honestly, I wouldn't have wanted my story to start with anything else.